As an organizational leader, how much are you willing to invest in the people that you have the privilege of leading to ensure that they are all on board and committed to achieving a common cause and that your retention rates remain high? If you need some assistance in reevaluating or recommitting your commitment to answering that question, you've stumbled upon the right conversation today. But first, I've got some data that you should know. Let's start by examining the importance of taking into account employee feedback, because my friends at the Pew Research Center report if employees feel as if their leaders are taking their suggestions into account when looking to improve organizational culture, they are 37% less likely to look for a new job. Overall, it is suggested that employees see a 20% individual performance improvement and an 87% reduction in their desire to leave. Furthermore, according to a 2024 Harris poll, it revealed that managers play a critical role from moving employees from burned out and checked out to thriving. For employees who say they are thriving at work, they believe that their managers have 3 critical factors which help them thrive, which include: if an employee believes that their manager is invested in their success. By a clip of 61%, they believe that they will contribute to a positive organizational culture. Meanwhile, the other 2 factors include an empathetic manager and whether employees believe that their leadership is approachable, at a clip of 57 and 53%, respectively. This is all important food for thought for my friend Stephen Baer. He's on a mission to help every company build meaningful relationships with the people who matter the most, their employees and customers. He's the co-founder and managing partner of Engagency. It's a firm built on his core belief that human engagement is the engine to business performance. He leads a team of behavioral experts who help organizations build meaningful and measurable relationships and connections with their workforce and customers. He's got over 30 years of a career focused on the science of connection, motivation, and activation. He brings a rare blend of both creativity, behavioral insights, and operational discipline. And he joined me this week to have a conversation about why it's important to put your people at the center of everything you do as an organizational leader, and to prove why they're the most important asset you'll ever have inside your operational heartbeat of success as an organization. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Stephen, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk to you about employee and customer engagement this afternoon. It's great to see you, and happy Thursday to you, my friend.
Well, happy Thursday to you too. Excited to be here, and let's dig in.
Absolutely. So, Stephen, one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to you is because when I talk to organizations about diversity in the workplace, I always tell them that embracing their people as their best asset is the key to business success. And I know for you, your agency always starts with human and behavioral connected, my friend. So why do you believe it's important that employers and organizations sort of value their people as their best asset, my friend? Tell me more.
Well, so I think people are the backbone of any organization, right? And so it doesn't matter how good your product is, or how fast it is, or how pretty it is. It's really about the vision of what it can be and how it can affect or impact the people who are buying it. And so that the mindset behind that comes from your people. The innovation comes from your people. And people really start to step up and innovate and create amazing stuff when they feel empowered. And if they don't feel empowered, you're going to get leapfrogged by other organizations. And when they do feel empowered, not only are they doing great stuff, but customers are seeing it, and it's infectious. When they see happy employees, they're attracted to a brand. And when they see unhappy employees, bad customer service, they often will leave a brand. So it all starts with your people. And companies that realize that and prioritize that are often winning. I'll give you one set of stats if you don't mind, because
absolutely,
there's the qualifying and everything I said, but I think you got to quantify it too. And the Forbes Best Places to Work study last year came out with these three things. The companies that fell into that list, the ones that have really hyper focused on their people, they see 1/3 the amount of turnover, so way less turnover of employees. They saw 8 times more revenue per employee than their competitors. And they saw these companies outpacing their competitors on the open market, the S&P, by 3.5 times. So if you're a leader and you look at it and say, gosh, all I have to do is focus on my employees and really prioritize them, and I'm going to get those types of results in addition to happy people and a great culture, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen, I wanted your opinion on this because, last year, I'm going to give you a stat. The Pew Research Center said that if employers feel as if their employees are fully engaged in the overall organizational culture, and when their opinions and sort of points of view are valued in an organization, they're 37% less likely to find or want to find a new job. And I'm wondering your thoughts on those findings and what it tells you about the importance of integrating employees in decision making when you're making decisions as an organization. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, so that aligns definitely with the Best Places to Work study, right? At the end of the day, if people feel seen and heard and valued and empowered, there's no reason for them to look or even think about looking. And so that, without a doubt, I'm not surprised by that data by Pew. And part of it is just as Gary Ridge, the former CEO and chairman emeritus for WD-40, talks about really the importance of turning managers into coaches. And so he defines this as ultimately it's about a coach who's going to stand up for their employees and say, day one, not I'm your manager, you report to me, say, I'm your coach. I'm here to make you successful. I'm going to help you be the best you that you can be. And by the way, that might be coaching you along the way. And sometimes that might be stepping out of the way and letting you be successful, right? Also talks about the importance of not focusing on failures within organizations, but focusing on learning opportunities, right? So if we think about every time something doesn't go just perfectly, what can we learn from that? How can we make it better the next time? How can we improve the organization or the outcome so that we're more successful? And those two things, coaching and really giving people the opportunity to fail in a safe environment, goes a long way. And so that definitely aligns with the Pew research that you talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I'm also curious to ask you your opinion on the difference between mentorship and empowerment within organizations. What do you think is the difference between mentoring and empowering employees inside an organization, my friend?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I think about mentorship, I think about one, advising someone on things that they can do, career coaching them, putting them in touch with other people, giving them opportunities, right? But the empowerment is what comes after that. Okay, so you've done all those things. You've helped them think about stuff. You've put them in touch with people. You've given them, lined them up to try different things. Now you got to empower them to be successful. Empower them to hopefully succeed or have a learning moment where they maybe were not successful, but they can apply those learnings to the next time. And I think that those are really important, is to both mentor and provide that learning moment, right?
Absolutely, and I know that your firm is called Engagency, my friend, as I mentioned at the top. It's a firm that is centered around your core belief that human engagement is the engine of business performance, my friend. I know that you lead a team of behavioral experts who help organizations foster meaningful and measurable connections with their workforce and customers, my friend. So tell me about the work that you're doing and what makes it so fabulous, my friend.
Well, so look, every organization has the opportunity to build a magical culture, a place where people want to come every single day. There's a CEO, Bob Chapman, who works in the industrial space, who has 12,000 employees under his watch. And he talks about the fact that all of his employees are the sons or daughters, mothers or fathers, husbands or wives, brothers or sisters of someone else. And while they're at his company for the 40 hours a week, they are under his care. And one of the things that we really focus on is helping leaders have that type of mentality, right? It's that servant leadership mentality. How do we create environments where we empower people to step up and be the best selves that they can? How do we create environments where there's innovation, where there is great communication, where there is opportunity for trying new things and failing safely? That's a lot of what we focus on, and we focus on big organizations, small organizations, and really helping them build that culture from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I'm also curious to ask you about managers or leaders having the foresight to relinquish control and create that structure of trust within an organization. What do you think goes into relinquishing control and giving the structure of trust to the employees that you're in charge of leading, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
They say that the best leaders are those ones who surround themselves with people who are more talented than them, right? So, I think the most important thing a leader can do is get rid of their ego and hire really smart people, really creative people, really talented people, and trust that they're going to be successful, right? And so I'll tell you, my journey. For nearly 20 years, I've run two different companies, one and then the next. And under both organizations, we ran very flat organization. And I define flat thinking, yes, I was the founder and I was the leader of that company. But whether you were 20 years my senior or 20 years my junior, I knew I had something to learn from you, right? And I feel like the leaders who can come into work with that mentality and empower their people to really bring innovation, bring creativity, bring ideas, those are the ones that are going to be successful, right? And so you have to kind of put your ego aside and let them do their thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Stephen, that you're the author of a book called Stickology, my friend, which explores the idea of unbreakable connections and how to build it with employees and customers for life, my friend. And I know that you will also host a podcast under the same name, my friend. So tell me about the book, the mission behind the podcast, and why you're passionate for the two, my friend. What do you want people to know?
Yeah, so one of the things I talk about when I talk about Stickology a lot is different forms of adhesives. So I talk about Velcro and I talk about glue. And the reason I start with those two is I think about Velcro as an adhesive that's really easy to put together. And it's effective sometimes, but it's also really easy to peel apart. Glue takes a little more time, it takes a little more effort, and it takes a little more patience, but it normally is really sticky. I find that most companies are building their company cultures and their employee engagements, and quite honestly, their consumer engagements with Velcro. They're taking shortcuts, they're cutting costs, and then when things fall apart or peel apart and people leave, they're surprised. So in this book, I really focused on 30 different company case studies, and I looked about what they're doing right, who's a Velcro company and who's a glue company, and really where the best practices are in how they are not just connecting with their employees or connecting with their customers, but how they're truly engaging them, how they're putting that time and effort in, how they're coaching them, or how they are meeting them and pulling at their heartstrings. And looking at those case studies, there's a lot that all of us can learn. And the last thing I put in that book, within each chapter, is different activities that we can apply to our jobs, our companies, real time, based off of those learned lessons. And so I find it really fascinating to think about the trends that you can see between the companies that are successfully building a glue bond with their employees and with their customers. And those are the ones that are outpacing their competitors every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, can I ask you your opinion on the difference between burnout and production? Because, you know, a lot of managers are driven by data and statistics and accomplishing goals, but sometimes they lose sight of working their employees too hard, which then leads to burnout, my friend. So what do you think is the key between, you know, striking rather the right balance between burnout and production? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, I think every company wants to be as productive as possible. They want to be as innovative as possible. They want to be thinking about the future. They want to be, you know, cutting costs and building more efficiencies, no doubt. But sometimes it does lead to burnout. And the cost to either to the disengaged employee, which, by the way, according to the Gallup poll from last year, 79% of employees worldwide are disengaged. So let's just stop and let that sink in. 21% of your workforce is engaged and the other, 4 out of 5 are not. That's ridiculous. And that's because many of them are burned out. They're quiet quitting. They're not able to really bring their all anymore. They're not bringing the excitement that they did day one. So something tells me that those companies that are hyper focused on productivity or efficiency or getting the quarterly results, they're missing the point, and they're missing out to their competitors. So I don't ever start there. I start with, how do we build an environment where people feel empowered, excited, and engaged? And when you have that, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on once leaders sort of climb up the corporate ladder, what do you think is the key for managers and those in positions of power, not to lose sight of, the engine that really makes the car move down the track, so to speak, and their employees. So as managers and leaders move up the food chain of management, my friend, what do you think is the key for them not to lose connection with the people that they're in charge of leading? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think one is putting your darn ego aside, right? I think the more that you can connect with your people, the more impact it's going to have. There are a few things that I look at that I talk about a lot on this topic. There was an old marketing campaign by Apple in the early '80s that was called "Think Different." And it was a tribute to the crazy ones who think different, right? And it focused on honoring individuality, celebrating curiosity, questioning norms, encouraging dissent, and expecting breakthrough ideas. And I believe that the leaders who really do that, and this is about encouraging and believing in and stepping out of the way of your employees, honoring their individuality, celebrating their curiosity, allowing them to question norms, encouraging them to dissent, and expecting them to do breakthrough ideas. Those are the ones that really are successful. And so I think that that's a really important place to start. And I'll give you, a few examples of where I've seen this happen really successfully. I don't know. I don't know if there are any Trader Joe's by where you are, Kevin, but here right outside New York City, there are a handful of them. The grocery store chain, small but really a fantastic brand. And what I love about a Trader Joe's is you go into one and you have a question as to where something is. First of all, you can find an associate on the floor easily, which you can't in a lot of grocery stores. Second of all, and that's because, by the way, they hire about 2 times the number of people to be on the floor as the average grocery store. Second of all, you can spot them in a heartbeat because they're all wearing their Hawaiian shirts and they all have smiles on their faces. Third of all, you can ask them where something is. They won't just tell you it's on aisle 4. They'll walk you to aisle 4, and they'll even walk you through, the ingredients on there. They'll open up the box. They're empowered to do whatever the heck that you need to do to educate you as a consumer. They have a cult following, and the results are amazing, right? They are outpacing their competitors from a profitability standpoint from anywhere from 2 to 10 times because they have just a different philosophy in how they approach that. This comes from leadership. I'll give you 2 other examples. Microsoft under the leadership of Steve Ballmer was a really toxic environment. It was really competitive, had really slow innovation as a result, had horrible morale. And after about 10 years of Steve Ballmer's leadership, Satya Nadella came in and he turned stuff around internally. He focused on collaboration, really focused on innovation, and he really focused on shared success. And when you look at their revenue growth between the time that Steve Ballmer and Satya Nadella were CEOs and the profitability growth, it's off the charts. It just skyrocketed. Same thing if you look at Home Depot under Bob Nardelli and Frank Blake, right? Under Nardelli, there was a sense of fear and intimidation and micromanagement, and employee autonomy was absolutely gutted. When Frank Blake came in, he really focused on trusting the front workers, walking the floors of the stores, writing thank you notes to hundreds of employees every week. Same growth in the charts of sales and profitability. And so to me, it's about, you can get to a certain way. You can fake it till you make it as a CEO or a manager or any leader role. But it's those who basically say, I'm confident enough in my people to step out of their way and empower them. That's when the real magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I'm also curious to get your opinion on, the connection between the engagement deficit between interaction and emotional commitment, my friend. So, how do you think leaders can be more engaged when it comes to the emotional commitment to their employees and really meeting them where they are from a emotional or mental health perspective? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when uh, we think about companies with great cultures, uh, I think about times that people go in and they interview at companies and they see ping pong tables and foosball tables and climbing walls and great kitchens and stuff like that. That's clutter, right? That's dressing. But where the real emotional connection happens is the coaching that we talked about. What you brought up earlier, that mentorship, the ability to really think about someone's career and their opportunities and introductions and unique projects they could work on, and even back to that example that I talked about with Apple and their Think Different campaign, honoring individuality, celebrating curiosity, questioning norms, encouraging dissent, and expecting that these people as a result are going to have breakthrough ideas. And so I think the more that you as a manager can focus on your people and celebrate them and empower them, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I know that your work is centers around one central question: why do people choose to stick with companies or walk away? I know it's a question that intrigues you, my friend, and I'm curious to get your opinion on the facts and data that you've gathered over the years that support an answer to that very question. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, at the end of the day, we think about whether you're an employee or you're a customer, uh, you need to have an emotional connection with a brand. The same way that we with our spouses or our family members or our friends need to have emotional connections to want to stay with them as well. So, in my book, I gave some examples. I look at um, apparel companies, Sheen. And Sheen's incredible. They're a master connection. They use data and trends and hyper personalization to stay, consistently in front of their consumers. And they know certainly what you want to buy before you even know. Right? They're fast, they're efficient, and they're putting out literally 6,000 new SKUs a day. I mean, it's crazy. It's insane. You juxtapose that with a brand like Life is Good, another apparel company. Life is Good is a fraction of their size, but what sets Life is Good apart rather, is their whole focus on positivity. And to me, that's the magic, right? Because I've been buying their shirts and sweatshirts and other things, hats, for 20 years now. And I've been buying it because they've tapped into something that I personally believe in: positivity. That message matters a lot more to me than the inexpensive apparel that I can get from Sheen, in 24 hours. I'm going to stay with a company like Life is Good because they speak to who I am as a person. They speak to my priorities. They speak to my goals and the what I want in society. And so when you can reach somebody and you can really tug on their heartstrings or play to their emotions, that's when the bond starts to create. And that's the work I was talking about earlier, right? That's the glue versus the Velcro. And we see it firsthand, because earlier this year, when initially tariffs were an issue here in the U.S. with China, we saw incredible drop off in purchases of Sheen because the prices had to double or triple, and that bond that Life is Good has with customers wasn't there with Sheen. It didn't stay. So I don't know if that helps kind of paint it, but I think that it's really thinking about how do you meet somebody emotionally, and when you do that successfully, they're going to be there. They're going to stay with you.
Absolutely. And Stephen, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on this study and findings from the Society of Human Resources Management that reported last year that employees leave companies for two main reasons. They found that poor management and bosses are a major reason for experiencing employee turnover, with reports suggesting that more than 7 in 10 workers would rather leave a job because of a bad boss, and they would also leave a job because of a lack of career advancement or growth within the company, my friend. So I'm wondering your thoughts on those findings and why it's important for leaders and organizations to always to continue to evolve, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I align and I think about that stat often. Related to that, Gardner came out last year with a stat that said 60% of new managers fail within 2 years. And they're failing for some very specific reasons, right? They're insufficient training, lack of leadership skills, inability to delegate, poor emotional intelligence. So part of it is it's not just about putting the right people in those roles. It's about really teaching them how to be successful in those roles. And that's the difference I was talking about earlier between managing and coaching. Um, you know, uh, Gallup came out with a report last year that talked about how 39% of employees believe that no one cares about them as a person, and 30% of employees feels that no one's encouraging their development. So kind of along what you were just talking about. I often talk about three things that any good manager or good coach should do for their employees. The number one is greet them, right? And it's greet them, know them, grow them. And I'll walk through each of these. Number one is greet them, make them feel seen. Uh, you know, Kevin, I was just thinking about you, and let me tell you why. Right? I mean, and it's like it's about making them feel like they're really important to you, making them feel like they're top of your mind, and making sure that they know that why they're important to you. Right? So greet them. Next thing is know them. Ask your employees to create a user manual. I know this sounds really silly, but someone taught me this about a few years ago, and I love this idea. Have every single one of your employees write down what's important to them, who's important to them. That's both professionally and personally. What motivates them, what ticks them off, what's important to them in team dynamics, right? And once you have this user manual for everyone on your team, not only do you know how to manage or coach them more successfully, but they know how to interact with each other. And the last one is grow them. And I think this is one that gets overlooked a lot. We see that often the C-suite in organizations will come out with, these great missions or visions or purpose statements. And then the rest of us on the, day-to-day, floor, we don't know what to do with that, right? So it's really important that you have this connective tissue with these managers or coaches who are able to help you as an employee understand, here's what our mission, vision, and purpose is, or what, why, and how, as a company. But here's what you, Kevin, can do in your role to play a key, key part in making that mission, vision, and purpose successful. And so greet them, know them, grow them. Those are three really important things. And they're often really forgotten.
Yeah, and Stephen, I'm going to ask a selfish question now because as I'm interested in your answer to this question. Stephen, I was born with cerebral palsy, and if you've listened to my podcast, you probably know that. And I've dedicated my adult life to speaking to organizations about hiring folks with disabilities, because I believe that people with disabilities are natural problem solvers, but they're historically underrepresented in the workplace, on a back setup, as I'm sure you know. So I'm curious to get your opinion on why people with disabilities are a competitive advantage for organizations why we should hire them within the fabric of organizations and how they can help us solve problems. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah. So look, as the father of 3 children who are all autistic, and unique in their own right, what I've been able to see as a parent is the incredible skills that they all have because of who they are and how they've learned to adapt and overcome challenges within their own lives and within the own settings that they've been in. And Kevin, I couldn't be more amazed by the things that they contribute to the different things that they're part of, whether it's, theater programs that they're part of or coding teams that they're part of or whatnot. I think that your very point about people, with disabilities of all types being problem solvers, they've been handed, challenges from day one, and they have the mindset of, well, I can figure this out. We'll find a workaround. We'll be successful. And that's what goes right back to what I was talking about with every one of our employees. We want to empower them to figure it out. And so I love that you asked that question, because regardless of the disability, I think that sometimes those are born contributors to make any organization way more magical than it is. And we kind of need to get our heads in that mindset of how can I get more problem solvers here to push my organization forward. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, what do you think it'll take to sort of break down the attitudinal barriers of hiring people with disabilities? Because, leaders aren't comfortable hiring people that they're comfortable with. And if you're not exposed to working with people with disabilities, sometimes, the biggest hurdle is overcoming that attitudinal barrier. So what are your thoughts on how we can eliminate that attitudinal barrier and create a pathway towards inclusion for folks with disabilities in the workforce?
Yeah, I love that question as well. I think part of it is about celebrating all your employees in organizations, and hopefully, once you've brought in 1 or 2 or 3 people with disabilities or different abilities, as a leader, whether you're at the manager level or at the C-suite level, the more that you can recognize their contributions and help people realize that they might be contributing or delivering something on a different level or a different way than others in the organization, that's when people's attitudes start to change. And it takes time. But I think that, I think also, there's something to be said about really proactively talking about whether it's in, part of your mission or part of your leadership communications with your employees about your commitment to building a truly inclusive organization, and not only your commitment to doing so, but why and what you expect we can get out of it. And sometimes being really blunt about the fact that there are misperceptions that people have about others that are different than them, and that we as an organization need to kind of open our minds and think about how do we grow. So
yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to talk to you about the importance of empathy and appreciation within organizations, because I know that we both believe that meeting people where they are from an emotional or empathy standpoint also boosts morale, and it also gives you a more diverse set of results. So talk to me about the importance of exhibiting or promoting empathy within an organizational culture and how important that is, my friend.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, this goes back to touching people emotionally, right? So that's in good times and in bad times. And it's really easy to build a sense of loyalty from your employees until, I don't know, I'm allowed to curse, until the shit hits the fan, right? and the reality is that as leaders, one of the things we need to do is we need to be as empathetic as we can to people in tough situations. We need to be supportive of them. We need to be understanding, and whether those are tough situations that impact the company or tough situations that impact them personally, empathy is a really critical skill when it comes to leadership. Because at the end of the day, we're all just people. We all put our pants on the same way. We all have personal problems at home. We all have personal flaws. And the more that we can see that full person for who they are and really relate to them as an individual and let them know that we have their back in good times and in bad, that's when loyalty happens. That's when commitment happens from them back to the organization and back to their leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I'm also curious to ask you about, the societal perception around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workforce. And I'll give you an example. My brother, he's an assistant sports professor of psychology at Missouri State University, and they've eliminated their entire diversity, equity, and inclusion department because of societal perceptions and how it's viewed in America in certain states. So I'm wondering your thoughts on how diversity, equity, and inclusion has sort of gone under this extreme makeover within organizations, and how we can get back to sort of a common compromise when it comes to DE&I, because it's much more than a buzzword or a concept. So I'm wondering your thoughts on where and how you thought people or organizations have sort of lost their way when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how do we get it back, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a great question. Personally, I'm sickened by what society is done when it comes to the positioning of DEI as a four-letter word, as something that's not positive for society. I'm hopeful that is will be short-lived, and as a result of certain political things that are going on right now in society, because the data shows and cultures show that when you build an organization or a community that is representative of a much larger and much more diverse set of people, that there's a lot more brought to the table, a lot more concepts, a lot more ideas, a lot more cultures that are represented, and that's when we as people learn from each other. That's when we as people grow with each other. That's when we as people grow individually. And so I don't know what leaders can do to bring that back, other than have a lot more backbone than they do right now. And I hope that more will exercise and demonstrate that backbone, because I think that if you just look at the data alone, companies that focus on DEI as a part of their philosophy are the ones who are winning, and the ones who have torn it apart and torn it out of their organizations are not better off as a result.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, I've got 3 questions left for you. And the first of those 3 questions is this, my friend. I want to talk to you about mission statements, because you say purpose is not a poster, and most mission statements fail, my friend. And how we have to look at a company's purpose and embodying sort of their daily decisions, and how that is sort of incorporated into their mission statements or a mission as a company, my friend. So what are your thoughts on mission statements and why most of them fail, my friend?
Well, I think that, so when I think about what a company needs to be successful, they need three things. They need a purpose, a mission, a vision, right? They need a strategy to accomplish that, and they need people who can execute it. And you can't out strategy a lack of purpose or mission or vision, and you can't execute any of that without people. And this comes back down to the conversation we had earlier about lack of good management, lack of good coaching. When you don't have that, you don't have people who can align themselves with that vision or mission or purpose that comes from the C-suite. I was taught a few years ago, kind of this cross analysis. If you look at an organization with a great mission, vision, purpose, let's score it. Let's give it 100 points. And a really very good strategy, 80 points, right? Let's score that as well. Give it 80 points. But really poor people engagement, let's give it 30 points. And you multiply those. 100 times 80 times 30, you're going to get 240,000 points. That's scenario one. Scenario two, the company has just as good a mission, vision, purpose. That's 100 points. Maybe not a great strategy. Let's give it 60 points. But it has really strong employee engagement, 80 points. 100 times 60 times 80 gives you 480,000. It's that combination. And what we did on that second scenario is we increased the employee engagement, the employee know-how to align with that purpose. And you need all three of those. And even if your strategy is not great, but you have something that everyone understands and everyone's getting behind, you're going to perform a lot better as an organization. Does that make sense, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I also wanted to talk to you about emotional intelligence and vulnerability within organizations. And I'm talking about being emotionally vulnerable and open, and the correlation between emotional intelligence, because I believe that leaders that are vulnerable and have the foresight to be, authentic people. They connect better with the people that they're in charge of leading, and they get better results, my friend. So, what do you think is the correlation between emotional intelligence, vulnerability, and organizational success? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Yeah, so I mean, the emotional intelligence comes back to what you're talking about with empathy. Certainly, with the coaching mentality, with the empowering your employees. It's about really listening to who they are and what's important to them and why they think something is going to be successful and where they think they can be most impactful with an organization. That's emotional intelligence. And if you run a team or an organization with the ability to pivot based off of those observations and really hearing and enacting on those, you're going to be successful. If you run your organization as this is how we do business, and take it or leave it, or we've always done it like this, or you have to do this. That's when people start to burn out. That's when people start to disengage. That's when people start to quiet quit, right? So it's really, really important. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Stephen, my final question is a two-part question, my friend, because I've been curious. You honestly have a lot of energy and enthusiasm for this work of, making sure that connection is at the root of business and employment success. But I'm also curious to ask you what frustrates you about the conversation around organizational culture today. If I give you a magic wand to fix what really has gotten under your skin, whether it's a misconception or a misunderstanding about the way organizational culture is supposed to work and how you would like it to work, what would you say would be that one thing that really gets under your skin? And then secondarily, my friend, when you look at your life and your legacy and the work that you do today, how do you want that to be defined?
Oh, those are hard questions, especially number two. But here we go. Look, if I had a magic wand, Kevin, I think the one thing I would, if I could only do one thing with that magic wand, is I would take all leaders, whether you're a manager or CEO or somewhere in between, and really empower you to have a servant leadership mentality. And I define that as, kind of almost flipping an organization on its head. It's not, how can my employees serve me? It's, how can I serve them? How can I empower them? How can I make them better? How can I make them grow? How can I support them? Because organizations that have that mentality at a leadership level, regardless of, once again, whether you're a manager or CEO, those are the organizations that are outpacing all the others. To contrast that, the ones that have, leaders with great egos who expect everything from their employees because they're lucky enough to work there, those are the ones who have disengaged employees. So I would use my magic wand to do that. As far as my own legacy, look, I'm a soft guy. I'm a touchy feely kind. I hope people will think that guy. I'm a dad of three who I care for more than you can imagine. A husband who I care for my wife more than you can imagine. I've been lucky enough to work with incredible employees and colleagues. And I just want people to know that I have their back. And I've always found that when I have their back, they have mine. And we're all here together. We're all just living this life together. And the more that we can support each other and grow together, the better it could be. So that's my legacy. That's how I want to live my life, and hopefully others do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, my friend, tell me if people want to get connected with you or buy the books that you've written. What's the best way they can do that, my friend?
So please go to stephenbaer.com. That's my website. And my book, Stickology, is available anywhere that books are sold. And if you're looking to connect, talk further about this, or looking for a speaker or looking for a great read, please check it out. So thanks so much.
Fabulous, my friend. Well, I want to thank you for your commitment to enhancing employee engagement and customer interaction, my friend. I find you to be a fascinating person, and it was a real privilege to engage in conversation with you this afternoon. So I want to thank you for being here and for accepting my invitation to engage in conversation. It's most appreciated.
Well, thank you for having me, Kevin. I love what you're doing, and I appreciate you making me part of it. So thank you for that.